Hey guys, I'm Joe Ferrisati. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about something that's very essential to the sport of drifting, from grassroots all the way to Formula D. What that is differentials and all the different variations of differentials. If you're interested, stay tuned. I think you're going to like what you're going to hear. Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're at Weir Performance in American Canyon, California, and standing here is Spencer. Spencer, tell us what we have on the table.
So we have a selection of differentials on the table. We have the most common open diff. This is what a lot of vehicles have from the OEM factory. Here, which is very common for drifting, welded open diff. Here we have a cause metal plate LSD. And behind it we have a torsion LSD, which is a gear train style LSD. And here we have a full spool, which is full lock.
Awesome. So now, one by one, we're going to talk about the benefits, pros and cons to these diffs in the sport of drifting. So let's start off with which one, Spence?
Let's start up with the open diff, which is most common in most vehicles.
Cool. So tell me how this works.
So the open diff has, obviously, you have your differential gears inside. You got the big opening here. This is a standard differential is what it's referred to. The open diff is not good for drifting. It will do the one tire fire very easily and is very inconsistent. It's not going to work out properly for a drift car at all.
Gotcha. So this is something you cannot rely on as far as getting the car sideways. Wheels will not turn locked.
Absolutely not.
Gotcha. That's what we consider really dangerous, and that's what I try to educate my students on, at least.
Yep.
So what's next?
Next is, this is very common with drifting, is people will take and they will weld an open diff. And they put the weld in here to basically make this differential non-functioning as a differential, and it's now all the gears are welded together, locked together. It will drive both tires all the time.
So this is like making it a solid state.
It's a very cheap way to make it a solid lock diff.
Now, why do you have this shoved in here? What's going on with this welded diff?
This shaft is actually pressed in to the top side gear, and it does not fit the opening here. So this open diff, this welded open diff, is out of a Nissan R200. A very common diff to get welded for drifting. This was put in it so I could demonstrate how welding the diff can actually cock the side gear from its original location and basically put the stub axle into a bind while it's in the diff. It's basically to show the deflection that's caused from welding all the gears together and the problems that can cause with the diff.
Gotcha. So what you're telling me is in this diff right here, because of the expansion contraction of the metals, it's actually distorted, no longer symmetrically straight.
Absolutely
so that
not.
can cause issues in a real world situation.
Yep, definitely.
Gotcha. So although you might weld your diff and you think it's functional, it might function for some time, but things will eventually break. So it works, but not reliably. So moving on from the welded diff, Spence, what are these two guys over here?
This one here is a torsion LSD. So this LSD also uses a gear train. So it is a gear train type differential. The difference between this and this LSD has a bias ratio, torque bias ratio. This LSD has a ratio of 1 to 1.
Gotcha. So different ratios, maybe allowing that to somehow lock the wheels
It limits the slip of the differential. They're very smooth, very quiet, but there are issues with these as well. So high-speed corners where you're, maybe lifting the load off of the inside tire. These diffs can open up and act like a open diff.
So if you take load off of one side,
Absolutely.
the other wheel is going to be free now, and it's almost going to be like a 1-to-1.
Well, it doesn't quite go 1 to 1. You still have the bias ratio, but you do lose traction.
Gotcha.
So you're going to lose your forward drive. They can work in drifting. People have used them in drifting. Probably not the most ideal LSD in a drift car.
Gotcha. So not a consistent one.
Not a consistent.
Might work for road racing, but like you said, if you lift up a wheel, it's going to be inconsistent.
Absolutely.
Gotcha. And then what's this other guy?
Next one. This is a cause LSD. This is a metal plate clutch type LSD. The big advantage with this LSD, you have friction plates on each end of the LSD. Between them, you have your spider gear assembly. On each side of the spider gear assembly, you have, I call them pressure rings. Some people call them cam rings. When the vehicle's under load, those cam rings push out. They clamp your clutch plates and limits the slip of the LSD. So as the cam plates push out, it applies a mechanical locking to the LSD.
So what you're telling me is so it's depicted upon acceleration or deceleration versus
under load or braking, it will still, depending on your version, there's a lot of different versions.
So
right?
versus the last one,
yes.
So your wheel could be in the air, but if it's on load, it's still going to engage.
You have a better chance of that with this LSD than you do with the torsion LSD.
Understood. So this will work in a drift application, but there's some variation and some variables.
Yes.
Gotcha. And then last but not least, what do we have here?
This right here is one of our full spools. Very simple design. It's got the splined bore, your ring gear mounts here, bearings, and this is 100% full lock all the time.
And this looks like a precision part that's already balanced and everything is symmetrically.
Absolutely. So this eliminates any of the problems that we talked about with the welded diff. So your axle shaft will stay on center line to the bearing. You're not going to get run out caused from the distortion from welding, things like that.
Now, obviously, these are two different diffs for two different applications, but I'm holding in my hand. It almost seems like, obviously, two different applications. This would be maybe lighter.
Oh, absolutely.
Apples to apples.
Apples to apples, it's pounds lighter.
Gotcha. And obviously, with that, who would use this?
Actually, this application can be used very well for drifting. We've had a lot of pro teams use our spools for drifting. Any kind of, I'm kind of getting off track, but you could use them for drag racing, although there's pros and cons on that. Drifting, competition drifting, weekend drifting, they're excellent for drifting. The main reason, they don't wear out.
Gotcha.
There's no clutches. The welds don't break because there aren't any.
It's one piece
part of steel.
So I think what we've gone through so far is you can see where a beginner drifter will start off and maybe progress to.
Right.
In grassroots drifting, a lot of people will utilize the welded diff.
Absolutely.
The welded diff is ultimately simulating what you should buy, which is a solid state spool.
Function-wise,
and some people
they do the same thing.
That daily drive their cars might get some like this because they don't drift it every day. So this
Absolutely.
is going to be a little bit more versatility versus, again, the weekend drift car that's a
track-only car.
Proprietary car for drifting. Every car in Formula D, ultimately this day and age, has some kind of spool mechanism from my understanding,
I
right?
think most of them, there is a spool for the quick change. I think a lot of guys use that. There are some LSDs for the quick change, but I don't know who's using them, who isn't.
I think in the progression of the sport, in years past, I remember people used to use LSDs, but with the consistency of a spool, that's what everyone
I think a
shifted
big
to.
majority of the drivers are using spools.
Awesome.
So.
Awesome. Well, there you guys have it. We've talked about all the different variations of spools. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the comments. If you haven't subscribed, make sure to smash the subscribe button and
hit the like button.
Hit the like button and stay tuned. Hey guys, thanks for watching our video on differentials. Hopefully you found that helpful. If you did, definitely smash the subscribe button.